Welcome to today's episode of People and Strategy. I'm your host, Mo Fatalbab, President of International Facilitators Organization. People and Strategy is a podcast from the SHRM Executive Network, the premier network of executives in the field of human resources. Each week, we bring you in-depth conversations with the country's top HR executives and thought leaders. For today's conversation, I'm excited to share with you a recording from SHRM's Visionaries 2025 Summit, an exclusive conference for SHRM's Executive Network members. This is a live session recorded on stage featuring Mercedes-Benz USA's President and CEO, Adam Chamberlain, and CHRO, Lars. The session is titled Harmonizing High-Stakes Leadership, Strengthening CEO and Executive Team Dynamics. Adam started his career in sales and has since worked in a variety of leadership roles over the years at Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen. Lars is an executive network member and was formerly an HR lead focused on talent for the Home Depot. Keep listening to hear their takeaways on how to ensure CHRO CEO alignment. Our next session is going to be amazing. It is harmonizing high-stakes leadership with the leaders of Mercedes-Benz in partnership with the CEO Academy. First, I'd like to introduce CEO Adam Chamberlain, President and CEO Mercedes-Benz USA. He leads 1,700 employees, 384 dealer partners.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And he has 30 years of experience in the automotive industry. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, man.
Next, I'd like to welcome Lars, who has been on this stage before. He is the CHRO, Mercedes-Benz, North America. And we are going to have an important conversation about real-world executive team challenges. And I got to just applaud you guys because you might have some challenges with one another that you're going to uncover here on stage.
Not yet. Hey, we do have one. It's fairly major, but the accent might give it away a little bit, but we'll come back to that later on.
All right. Well, welcome. So, Adam, I'm going to start with you. And I want to talk about breaking down silos in the C-suite and how you foster collaboration.
Thank you, Mo. I think one of the things, I was very fortunate when I first became a leader, I guess over 20 years ago, to have a really good coach who Lars has also met, a guy called Simon Scott, who also coaches the London Stock Exchange. He coaches the Formula One executives on how to take their whole platform globally. He's worked with them. So I was very fortunate that he didn't charge me the same price tiers that he charged those other guys. And he's kind of like me, so help me. And so I learned a lot from him. And I think a lot of it is applying the basics consistently. So, for example, we will have a Monday morning kickoff. We've collapsed. I came back into this business, 92 days ago. And they used to have 5 or 6 executive management meetings a month. And all meetings, the whole business, in my opinion, was paralyzed by meetings. And to give you some context, what I mean by that, we're a sales and marketing company for finished products, right? Our cars are already built. We like to think we get a say in how they're done, but they basically arrive here in North America, and our job is to distribute them, win the hearts and minds of the dealers that sell them, and win the hearts and minds of our customers. But basically, we distribute cars. We're not trying to solve world cancer. We're not trying to put people on the moon. So we didn't need to have 6 executive management meetings a month. We need to be really intentional about what we need to do and empower our people to run and do it, right? And so we collapsed all the meeting structure. I spoke to Lars daily before I rejoined the company, because I should also say I worked for 2016 to 2021 for Mercedes-Benz, then had a sabbatical away for 4 years and I've just come back. But I spoke to Lars an awful lot about the setup, because I wanted to come in with a real intent to kind of drive change. So we have a Monday morning kickoff, all the executives, between 8 and 9, depending on what other schedules are happening. But basically, there is no agenda. There's bring a coffee and let's huddle around the table or around a desk and talk about what the priorities of the week, what are the burning topics for the week ahead. And it just kind of shares, it's, our very old English expression is a problem shared is a problem halved, right? So it shares priorities, it fosters communication. And oftentimes, when there's no kind of business topics, you might talk about what you do at the weekend with your kids or with your families or friends. And again, that kind of fosters a relationship of caring and breaking down the silos. Then we have a monthly executive meeting that's 4 hours long. super intentional about the agenda items. Decisions are made in the meeting, Lars, right? So people get on and go and cascade to their teams and get their teams running. And if we need a decision, we'll crash a meeting together and we'll talk about that. So I would say we've done an awful lot of work. One other piece we try and do is I always say to my team, what's the intent of the meeting? What are we trying to achieve as a result? And what do we want people to do as a result of being in that meeting? And because then I think if you can be clear about that, and you're clear about the messaging, it's really useful then for the team to get on and do their job.
Yeah. And Lars, from your perspective, you've been in this position for 15 years and comes in 7 years. 7 years.
I've been with the company for 10.
Okay. And here comes in a new CEO.
Yeah.
How do you prepare for that?
How do I harness the new CEO? No, just kidding. I think that the first thing is to really be clear in his intent. So as Adam mentioned, we had the benefit of having a number of calls. One, we also had the benefit of having a really good relationship prior to him taking the seat. But we had a number of calls before, and I was really clear on what his intention was. And then he was also open. And I think this is perhaps the most important part, and it's where I take great delight in our relationship. He was very open to hearing my perspective on his intention. And I think combined, we had the melding of something really foundational, but also something transformative. And I know sometimes too, those little things appear to sound simple, but it's not simple-mindedness. I think it really is profound. And then we just use that on a daily basis to make sure that we launch this relationship, but more importantly, launch his helm in the right way. And that's worked tremendously well. I think it also has given the rest of the executive team a chance to model or it's given us a chance to model what the relationship should look like with him and the CMO, him, the head of network, et cetera. But it's actually been fantastic. And I think it is grounds for any challenges that might lie ahead for us. And I think we'll be able to get on the other side of them without great difficulty.
And have you all ever found yourself at odds in any way? And how did you get through that, Adam?
I mean, I think the good news is what we're trying to create in the company, and again, I speak to Lars about this a lot, is a culture where we're trying to achieve the goal. We had an offsite with the team 6 weeks ago, Lars?
6.
And define what would make us look great. What does great look like for our business? Again, we're not trying to solve really complex issues. We're trying to distribute selling cars and parts. And so we aligned really quickly. We set 3, you know how the classic offsite, everyone takes a sticky sticker and you have 3 groups and you come together. All 3 groups who put all 3 groups who put the same things they wanted to achieve down. It was remarkable. So we've got a simple mantra now. We sell about 300,000 cars in North America today. We think it's eminently feasible to sell 400,000 by the end of the decade, by 2030. So we have a simple mantra. Is what we're doing today helping us get to 400,000? If it's not, can we stop it? And if that means you can stop doing some reporting that you hate doing anyway, by all means stop it. And we'll find there's plenty of work to do. Don't worry about not having something to do. But I think that kind of single-mindedness across the company, of course we have discussions, and we have a disagreement on an HR policy actually a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we did.
And it was less actually, Lars. It was more of a global thing because we also have 28 other entities in North America that we have to have some degree of consistency with. And, you know, in the end, I think Lars and I looked at each other and said, is this going to kill us just to say yes to this one? Take a loss here because in the bigger picture of things, we took enough wins.
That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah, Mo, I would just say when the relationship is founded on dignity, then I think you actually are starting to put a nice veil or border around those challenges or those odds. Now, he won't tell it, but I'll go ahead and tell it now. I was hoping that he would say, we do have one challenge.
We can work it out right here.
Okay, go ahead. All right. We actually can't. We actually can't. We can't. It's impossible.
There's 2 soccer teams in North London. They're literally less than a mile apart.
Leicester United,
Tottenham Hotspur and Arsenal, and they are arch enemies. The police separate the parts of the city because the 2 fans cannot cohabit and coexist. Literally, it's tribal. And that's the one thing. It was very disappointing to me when Arsenal beats us so thoroughly for the last 6 years. But I feel like we're coming back, Lars.
Yeah.
I feel like we're coming back.
It can only be settled on the soccer pitch. Yeah. And it'll only be settled in the next 2 matches this season. So
yeah. You were going to say?
No, I wanted to wrap up just by saying that I honestly think he and I will continue to have odds. But back to that mantra, does it help us sell another car? And I think so oftentimes in an executive capacity or in a relationship across executives, we just get so stumped around things that really don't matter at the end of the day. And by the way, we're also diluting the clarity that we hopefully have set across the organization by allowing those things to dilute the relationship and, dare I say, the clarity.
And let me just add one more there, Mo, if I may. And I think, I talked about all the meetings that used to happen. When you have so many meetings, it dilutes clarity.
Yeah.
Because there's no pressure to make a decision. Things just go. And I noticed that I asked for the previous minutes on a few topics, and I see topics which are really simple to fix.
Yep.
Just going and going and going and going because no one took a decision, just wanted to debate and opine to things, right, Lars?
Yeah.
And so I think that clarity is really helpful.
Yep.
Speaking of clarity, I would imagine there are times, Lars, where you get conflicting direction from the CEO and the board.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those moments when that happens?
Yeah, it happens often. I think the number one thing is for he and I to have an immediate conversation about it. Because 9 times out of 10, based on the board structure, so there's a board member for HR globally, and there's a board member for sales and marketing. Both of our bosses, or I have a boss in between. But nevertheless, I think it's important for he and I to discuss the conflict that we see, and then how do we translate that to our business locally in North America. I mean, it's never quite easy. There's politics that we have to navigate through, but I think that discussion is very important. And then oftentimes I'm looking to him to ask, what's the best way for me specifically, but then for us to navigate this? And that's when I rely heavily on Adam's wisdom, largely because he sees it from a totally different vantage point, but also because from the sales and marketing arm, they have a certain view on how the world or how our business should operate. And so those two in particular, Mo, I think that really helps. Maybe there's a third. I also I'm looking for his insight on who else within our executive team can shed some light as to how we also navigate it. But I would get it from that second point I made often.
And sometimes there are general communications breakdowns. What are the indicators that you look for, and how do you address those? Adam, maybe start with you with this one.
Yeah, I think one of the things you go back to, what's the mission? So if we've got a communication breakdown, why have we got a silo suddenly appeared? But I think getting teams together with a degree of frequency. Again, we're fortunate, Lars. We all sit in one building. We've got a beautiful building on Abernathy up here in Sandy Springs. But I think we try and jump on it pretty quickly. I'll call that if I sense there's an issue with an area, and I need to speak to you about an area this afternoon actually on data. But if we sense there's an issue, I'll talk to Lars and say, look, how do we handle this together? And again, there's a kind of mantra: is this something we need to really fix? Is this a real issue like DEFCON 1 for us? And we'll fly into it. If it's a smaller thing, we'll try and figure out how we can appease the situation and get the parties talking without kind of flying in from all angles. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So try and assess the gravity of the topic and why there might be the silo there.
And what are the indicators, Lars? How do you know that there's an issue?
Well, oftentimes I will, and this is over a 10-year period with the company, when things start to make their way down to the organization, I know that's usually a sense that we've got an issue, but down to the organization, down through the organization, and the message has been lost along the way. And I think at that point, that's when it's time for us to take it back to, why did this happen in the first place? What was the original intent? And as a company too, when you're working between a foreign headquarter operation and then certainly what's happening locally, that is pretty commonplace. At the same time, that's when we see it making its way down the organization and people losing the thread. That's a strong indicator. I think the other thing too is, and this isn't always the case, and this is just my philosophy, whenever emotions start to get involved, that suggests to me that perhaps people miss the clarity as to what's going on. I mean, we have it right now where we are really forging a unified operation across North America, 12,000 employees, several different legal entities. There's a lot of emotion. But I think what is critical for us is to go back to why are we doing this in the first place? And again, as Adam said, will it help us in any way sell more cars? The answer is yes. There'll be better synergies. And if for whatever reason those emotions are not connected to the sale of more vehicles and us achieving the ultimate mission, then we need to have a discussion with the individual to make sure the emotions are parked.
When are emotions good and when are they not good?
We were talking about this the other week. There's if you put stress on the system, I think you can see some healthy emotion, but there's a very fine line between stress and de-stress. So you tend to get very high production up to the top of the bell curve, and then you get de-stress with the angry, bad sort of emotion on the side. And one of our jobs as leaders, and certainly Lars and I talk about that, one of our jobs in leadership is to manage that balance between stress and de-stress.
Yep.
And because you right at the top of that bell curve, you really see optimal performance. When teams are stretched but collaborating, working well together, you see great results. But your job is to try and keep people on top of the bell curves and let them slide back down occasionally as well.
And Mo, if I might, Adam mentioned, he referenced Simon Scott a few minutes ago. That's something he'd enlightened me to. De-stress or distress is never good in an organization. And so when you start to use those parameters of stress and distress, then you say, I can see, I can localize around where something needs to be addressed. Again, I mean, we have a specific scenario today where I would say I can sense it starting to create distress. And now we need to get the organization back to equilibrium, which is that stressful point where we can really attack the mission wholeheartedly, but with correct focus.
The other thing I would add, having worked in a couple of organizations that didn't have this at all, the company has a philosophy of collaboration on projects. So there are many cross-functional projects where the leaders of all the teams will be involved. So we've got one right now called Next Level Performance, where we're looking at all aspects of the company. Where can we drive revenue? Where can we manage the costs more efficiently? As Lars talked about, bringing all the entities together. But we have all of the leaders involved in that project working together collaboratively for the outcome. So of course you get silos, of course you do. But as a general theme, and my last company I worked on was almost no collaboration. So this is a really collaborative business.
Yep, agreed.
And Lars, what can HR do? What steps can HR take to ensure transparency in financials and budgeting?
Yeah, so Adam mentioned this initiative that we have called Next Level Performance. I think, number one, I've always tried to ensure that the biggest line item in our balance sheet, which of course is labor costs, is clear to everyone across the executive team. And then what are the main instruments that creates that largesse or the expansion of those labor costs? So if everyone's clear, and then if everyone's clear on exactly how they create the right equilibrium or balance, then everything's fine. But that's my task along with the CFO. So if I take it all the way back, the relationship between the CHRO and the CFO is also even more, is critical, not even more than the CEO, but it is very critical. So it's Adam and I, and then it's our CFO. Because my understanding of the elements of what she looks at then gives me the opportunity to properly communicate across the rest of the executive team. And if we do that properly, then we can take it down throughout the rest of the organization. But I play a major role in that. And I can tell you when we look at our overall benefits cost, these things are ballooning overnight. And it's really important that we have the right clarity. But again, I communicate that clarity across the rest of the executive team. And then we start to see some harmony across understanding, but more importantly, deployment.
Thank you. And as we talk about facilitating consensus and helping with more effective decision-making, what role do you see HR playing in that process at Mercedes-Benz North America?
Well, I think it's central, and I'll use a word, catalyst.
Yeah.
I believe facilitator is certainly appropriate, but I like the word catalyst. And if you think about it, I'm sort of the kick-on switch for a number of things that happen. And so are any of the other executives with respect to their function. But I believe I play a key catalyst role. I try my best to listen for emotion, listen for lack of clarity, listen for distress, and try to bring everyone back to center. And oftentimes I won't do it in a public setting. I won't do it in a group setting. I'll do it one-on-one. Because these, you guys know it all too well. I mean, executives are under immense pressure. And I'll just use an analogy that I learned from another football club in England. Their leader of player development, Jack Naylor from Everton Football Club. He said, we concentrate so much on the player, or in this case, the employee, but not enough on that leader. And so to create even more pressure in a group setting versus taking it away in a one-on-one, I think adds to the problem, perhaps. So one-on-one, I'll sit down with them just to gauge what are they really feeling, and they're very very open with me, oftentimes, more so than they are in a group setting, where vulnerability perhaps may not be the order of the day, but they'll share with me one-on-one. Here's where this is coming from, and then that gives me the angle or gives me the opportunity to step in and say, let me explain again. Let me add some clarity, but hopefully too in the process, I'm removing some of that distress.
Thank you. We talked about executive coaching, and I know that it's been an important part for the entire C-suite, and specifically for you, Adam. I'm curious how the leadership coaching has impacted your C-suite and what you've seen. And then I want to talk about your own experience.
Yeah, I think firstly it gives you a perspective, right? So I think you can try it in your own mind. Even when I think about restarting at Mercedes-Benz USA after 4 years away, and of course you're going back as a different person. That's the first thing. You're no longer vice president. You're now the CEO. So you have to be approaching everybody in the position a little bit differently than you were necessarily before. So I think I would talk to my coach then about some contextual thinking about how we're going to approach the situation. And 9 times out of 10, all he's probing me to do is use the tools which I have, but it's about preparing yourself and getting those tools ready for the situation you're about to walk into. So I think again, I was very fortunate. I had a really A-class guy a long time ago who supported me, and oftentimes I use the same tools over and over again. And it's just, but it's useful to have an hour's conversation with him. Before we did our offsite 6 weeks ago, he and I had an hour together in terms of approach. And I've taken the same approach for the offsite. We have all of our dealers in North America. We have 450 people coming together in Las Vegas in about 6 weeks' time.
6 weeks.
And one of the things, we're going to give them a very different message and an uplifting message, because we've already tested it on a few smaller audiences to know that it resonates. But one of the things that Simon got me thinking about for our offsite, and doing exactly the same thing for the dealer meeting, is think about pre-contact. What do you want people to be thinking arriving at the meeting? In contact, what do you want to leave with them? What do you want them to leave as a result of the presentation? And then post-contact, what do you want them to do? So we've thought about it, and I'm going to write a little postcard, nothing profound, just a small note to every single of those 450 attendees to say, look, this is a new world, and please be open-minded. Please support the endeavor. Then obviously they'll have a well-prepared storyline and presentation from my team. And then on the same day that we do the kind of 2.5 hour presentation, every leader who's presenting has got to do 2.5 to 3 minutes summary to camera with 1 or 2 of their charts of their key messages. And the idea is then the post-contact piece will be every dealer holds a meeting for their team and does a cascade that's 25 minutes long to get some coffee and donuts and share the messaging, and then give their kind of impulse over the top of the presentation. And so then you've got kind of it feels like we've got a thread then that can be transferable and managed. And for our leadership offsite, Lars, I wrote everyone a note pre-contact. We had our presentation in contact, and then we had our much less glamorous than a video, but we had our kind of aligned 3 to 5 things that we're going to do differently as a result of the meeting as our post-contact. I think that's super useful when you're thinking about trying to impact big change.
One of the things I've heard from you consistently, Adam, is every meeting is absolutely nailed down in terms of what the outcome's going to be. No wasted time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's not just for the endeavor of not wasting time. It's also for clarity, because you want people to understand, what are we trying to do here? Yeah. And what do we want to do as a result of having this meeting? We didn't just come together to have coffee. That's very nice if we do, but we got a business to run, and we need to do some things.
Yeah. And Mo, if you don't mind, I'll tell you, when I got Adam's note during or right before our offsite, when you attend those meetings with clear objectives, hopefully, But you also have your set of objectives. Your team is sort of funneled to you. This is what I want to make sure you say. Please make sure you mention this. Let's at least gain alignment on this. Let's get a decision here. What the note did, it was reminded me that of all of those things, which all of them I'm sure are important or are of importance, there's one thing that's most important. And it's us collaborating in this moment that we have, which is a day plus, to make sure that we hit the objectives that we've set prior to the meeting. And I think psychologically, knowing the importance of our roles, I think those little things really matter. Figuratively, I just think we all have these on-stage moments. And your preparation for those on-stage moments and the tools you use prior to going on stage, they're absolutely critical.
Yeah. Adam, one of the things that I'm curious about is how do you empower leaders to communicate challenges? Too often, people are reticent, they're afraid to communicate the challenges, and that can be quite costly.
I think first of all, I think you have to lead. I think you have to take a leading position with your leadership team to talk about the challenges and to confront things, right? So if I think about, I'll give you a chat in my previous company, the system that powers all dealerships is a thing very boring, but it's called dealer management system. Everything that's done, whether it's selling a car, getting a part, getting a loaner, taking money, every single thing, there's an infrastructure that spreads like a spider's web through a car dealership. And my previous company had 380 car stores in North America. And the thing that powers them, the DMS, went down for about 30 days. It was a cyber attack. So nothing, and it was well publicized, it was 2 years ago. A dealer couldn't basically do anything with any kind of recording. Everything was done manually. So we were selling cars, we were handwriting borrowed car agreements, getting people to sign, saying that they acknowledge it wasn't their car, etc. But what we did, and so it was day one, it was like, the world's finished, we're finished. And you can imagine, right? It takes you back to that first day of COVID. But so what I did was every single day, we had kind of a leadership call for strategic things. This is how we're approaching CDK. We filed an insurance claim with our cyber insurance company, blah, blah, blah. But then there were the operational leaders. So I got the 30 operational leaders that managed those 380 stores every single day for every single month, every single day in June when it impacted us on a call. And we talked about, this is the news today. And we asked the leaders to talk about best practice. What are they seeing that's good? What are they seeing for people that are selling cars, are getting cars in for service? How are we figuring that out? And so I think communication and not hiding behind a problem, but confronting it up front is critical. And similarly with the tariffs. So unfortunately, the automotive industry got slapped with some pretty big tariffs on the 2nd of April. And we had a crisis room and confronted it. And I think if you can get the leadership team talking about it and realizing that this isn't going to be the end of the world, we can figure it out. Then they've got positive messaging to give to their teams. So then you're kind of empowering them through being very open and intentional about discussion channels.
Just as an aside, how much more is a Mercedes-Benz on a percentage basis because of the tariffs?
Well, I think we were extremely good because we increased our prices between 0.6 and 1%. So we didn't pass on. We felt, first of all, you may recall, I'll be very politically correct here, you may recall that Walmart got slapped down pretty heavily for saying they were going to pass prices on to customers. So we were very sensitive to that. But honestly, the truth is there's an elasticity, right? We're already at a premium price. If you put your prices up, the tariffs are 15%. If you put car price up by 15%, you're going to lose volume significantly. So we want to grow our volume, not lose it. So we went to the factory and said, follow us on a growth ambition. And so we didn't pass on the price.
What metrics do you use to measure the impact of executive team initiatives?
So we have a biannual survey called the Pulse. I think that's a very important one for us. And in fact, it really sets the tone. It's through Gallup. It's a global survey. We're actually in the survey window as we speak. So I think with Adam's most recent onboarding, I think this will be really pivotal as to how he steers the organization over the next few years on to the next time we administer the survey. I tend to look at turnover like most, but I'm looking for spotty trends in turnover. We have not seen as high a turnover rate in the last couple of years, which has me even more puzzled sometimes. But I often go back to the pulse survey. One of the things we're also tracking too, we've seen a big spike in litigation matters. I'm also tracking that. I'm noticing some interesting trends. We tend to see it more in a white collar environment than we do in our blue collar population, which has me most curious. And then there are times where I will share that with the respective executive committee member. I'm very selective on what I share and how I share it. I try my best to share it one-on-one versus in a public setting. The last thing I want to do is, so to speak, drop grenades in an executive meeting, which can suggest it's more about me and the statement I'm trying to make as opposed to the impact or value that we ultimately need to arrive at, given the specific metric. But I go back to it that employee engagement score is vital, and that's not rocket science to anyone. I think everyone is measuring that to some degree, but it's really important.
Yeah, and there's two other things I look at. One is as being an automotive retailer in automotive retail in North America, the North American Dealer Association is a very strong body, and every year they survey all of their dealer partners by OEM, by manufacturer, and they ask a whole bunch of questions you can probably imagine. But one of them that's really important to me is trust in the leadership team, and because that tells me as well how our teams are representing us with our key business partner, right? So that tells me. So I look at that. And there's one other thing. We do a town hall once a quarter. We've done a lot. We've done 4 in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
Because I was keen to do a kind of hello, I'm here. Then first I want to do one after 60 days to say initial observations. Then we did another one. But during those town halls, we have kind of an open mic either through online questioning or microphones in the room. And I'm always interested in the personal questions, obviously, but no one's really going to ask, and very rarely someone asks you a difficult question, but the online questions are always interesting to me to have a quick look at and get a sense of what people are asking for.
Yeah.
And the tone of those has been excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Mo, there's one that, in fact, on my drive down, I had a meeting with my team to really talk about measuring burnout, but from 2 different dimensions. Obviously, there's a burnout, which we think we can measure through a platform we use called Headspace. But I also wonder too, apart from the burnout, is there something going on operationally with the team where we see the greatest amount of burnout? And are people clear with where we're headed? Because I think over the last few years, we've created an upheaval of work, but not necessarily directed towards any specific objective. It's been a lot of work, and I think that has led to a lot of burnout. So this is one of the things that we intend on measuring. I'm a big proponent of well-being. I think if we're going to get to 400,000, every employee has to feel well, and well-being is not just your traditional metrics. It's, are they bought in? Do you have the level of energy? Is their leader providing the right level of energy so that they can have the right environment?
And what are you all doing to promote well-being in terms of programs?
It's a well-timed question.
Yeah, it is. It is. We're ending our wellness week. This is the first time we've ever done a wellness week. I'm a big proponent of wellness. Adam certainly is too. And I think with his onboarding, we've been able to now usher in this renewed commitment on the impact of wellness. So much more to come. But we are really trying to combine the overall wellness, a winning attitude, which is very personal. Both are very personal to the employee. And then what is your overall contribution to Mercedes-Benz? I think we get those 3 dimensions working in the right direction. I think then we have a real chance. I wish you could measure energy because then that would give us a clear indication that our messages and our overall message is clear and it's giving people confidence. But obviously that's a work in progress.
Yeah. So Adam, this is a new role for you. Next 5 years, it'll be a success when?
It'll be a success when, I mean, it's a really interesting time, honestly, because I could go on for hours about what's going on in our industry. I remember going to school and people talking about political, social dimensions and pressures. I've never seen such a period where you've got craziness going on in geopolitics, world politics, right? So that kind of one dimension. Then you've got a very uncertain business environment. It's very hard to plan when you get a tariff and other countries are doing similar things. And then with our industry, you've got a real kind of we're at a vortex because you've got in some parts of the world electrification, so battery electric vehicles are the dominant powertrain. In North America, only 7% of the vehicles the country buys, that's the best way of framing it, are battery electric vehicles. So you've got to, if we were investing in a normal cycle, 7 to 10 billion euros over a 5-year period, we're doing double that. But the revenue isn't growing accordingly, right? Because the market, the world economies are just kind of flat. So you've got these big dynamics going on. So that's my caveat. But I will think that the role has been successful when, one, obviously we have a hard target towards 400,000 cars, and we talk about it because we wanted to have a big North Star. We need to have consistent growth over the next 5 years. So that's the way we think about it. When we have a leadership team that is empowered, feels great, and we can create some succession in that team. That's a key job for us, Lars. And we have a team that feels united and energized and gives us good feedback in the Pulse survey that this is an amazing place to work. I think the combination of those 3 things will be at a high level, would be pretty cool.
And Lars, how will you know when that team is united?
So I have a clear vision for HR's role, which is in direct correlation with what I'd love to see as a unified body across the executive team. As long as if we can play this catalyst role to unlock the potential across all of our employees, so they help us create this competitive advantage, I think we've won. A. B, if our executives can get behind that. And then, as Adam said, to start to identify what are the value-creating roles across the organization and not of the individuals, I think then we have a formula for absolute success. What is nice about our executive team, and this is all executive teams from the time I've been with the company, there's a distinct pride that they have in the brand. And that's actually not only the executive team, that's down to every employee. It's the number one thing that we've measured. It's the thing that we've measured over the years, and it's always been the number one. So that's a really good basis, but I think now we have to make sure their personal endeavors are aligned with where we want to go. And that, I think, will bring great confidence across the rest of the employee population.
And when we think about culture, how would you describe the culture amongst those team members?
It's very open. I see great dialogue, even to the extent sometimes that it gets emotional. A lot of courage. People who are very willing to take on the tough message and the tough task. There was a time, I think, as an executive team, much prior to Adam, where we were afraid on tackling the tough decision, which of course meant being reluctant on the tough message. I don't see that anymore. And I think there's one thing in leadership that must be absolutely present, and it's courage. And courage is a big word. It's not just standing up and saying what needs to be said, but also living that. And courage also equals empathy. And I think there's great. I think there's quite a bit of prominence if you have executives doing that. But that's the one thing. Those are the 2 things: courage, and then the willingness to take on the tough message and decisions.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. The only thing I'd add to that is by collapsing some of the kind of formal meeting structures that we had, Lars. Because what happens if you have executives meeting 4, 5, 6, 7 times a month? Everyone's preparing either PowerPoints or notes or something, right? And all of those teams that are preparing something by kind of, by default, are expecting an outcome or a result. So I think there was a little bit of inertia, Lars, and I think we've created energy just by collapsing some of those structures that didn't need to be there, because people feel a bit liberated. They're not just preparing charts that never get an answer. And we can have, I think about a thing we did a few weeks ago. We just said, okay, we need to meet. Let's meet at 8:30 on a Tuesday morning. Made the decision in 45 minutes. Didn't need to have the whole of the executives in the room to make that decision, right? You just get together and say, yeah, let's do it.
And what specific activities have you all done to build this team, to create cohesion, other than getting out on the soccer pitch, as you call it, and hammering it out?
I think again, this is
coming on the 16th.
We're so fortunate. The wonderful stadium next door has our brand on top of it, literally, and we get to use it a couple of times a year. So our teams will. I'm in Germany, sadly, so
I won't be there.
I won't be there. It's probably better, but I'm in Germany. But our teams get to go and play flag football and soccer on that field, and in a very inclusive environment. So it's not about young guys ripping around and tackling everybody. It's everybody gets to play if they want to play. But the other thing I think Lars and I talked about it. So when we did my kind of first 60-day town hall, we organized a cookout for the team.
Yeah.
And we had a band, and we had some kids activities, and we had a charity give back for the furniture charity. Lars, remember the name?
Yeah. I think it's the Furniture Bank.
The Furniture Bank. Their warehouse burnt down at the end of June, so they lost about 1,800 pieces of furniture, which they then gift. And so we were, with our team of people, with our 700 people on site, we were able to build about 1,200 pieces of furniture for that charity, which was great. But I think the thing that Lars had said, we had, I think, 800 people turn up. It was the biggest attendance we'd had in a couple of years, Lars, right?
Correct.
And I think, so we're building that feeling of inclusivity again. And we had if anyone knows Atlanta United soccer, their goalkeeper is a guy called Braguzan. He turned up and he's having kids shooting goals at him. And so we just had that kind of community feel. It was pretty cool, honestly. And obviously we're privileged to be able to do things like that. But it was pretty cool doing all of that and making the teams feel included and making sure that people brought their kids. We allowed the staff to go at 4:00 because some of them live. Atlanta traffic, for those of you who are not in the city, is a nightmare after 4:00. And some of them can live, it's 15 miles, but it can take an hour. So we allowed people to leave at 4:00 so they could get back with their families by 5:30, 6:00. And that kind of feeling of inclusivity, I think, really fosters what Lars was talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can't let you go without touching on AI.
Okay.
Because it is certainly part of the conversation and impacting all of us. Apart from the AI in the cars themselves, because I know that's coming, and maybe we should hear a little bit about that just to give us a glimpse of the future. But how are you all using AI in your organization? In what ways is it really showing up for you?
Listen, I'm happy to report, Mo, HRO was one of the first to launch a platform. It's called Auto.ai. We launched it about a year ago. We've since sunned it down because there have been a number of initiatives across the company globally. We are, in my opinion, because I'm a fast mover when it comes to AI, or like to think I am. We're not doing as much as we can, but we've certainly invited all employees to take full advantage of it. Interestingly enough, we've exhausted 10,000 licenses globally using Microsoft's suite. There are 2 weekly endeavors where the employees gather together to really talk about some of the more cutting edge initiatives. Our IT organization is really fast moving. They've also pushed it into our dealer network. So they're using AI with some of the dealer communications. As I said before, we're using it specifically in HR. The one thing I would say, and I was in Dubai, I had the pleasure of being at a SHRM event last week in Dubai, where, I mean, they are talking incessantly about AI. For the late adopters, what I hope people really understand is AI is like the wind. You cannot stop it, but we can certainly harness it, and we can certainly use it to our advantage. I think there's some unique opportunities. What I'm asking my team on a consistent basis to do, and I've attended some of these discussions on a weekly basis with the rest of the employees, keep thinking of use cases. We have to keep identifying how we use it. And the more that happens, I think the more we'll see that adoption, because it's based on testimonial. The more one employee talks about how they're using it, the more it takes off, and then we can bring that into a use case environment and really start to deploy it across the entire organization. But it really started as a spark. A couple of employees, a couple more, then that started to exponentially grow.
And we encourage that. We encourage, if some employees want to take a lead on something, we'll give them the tools, but we'll get them to set up a lunch and learn type of experience where they bring more guys and girls together, and that kind of then propagates through the organization. We have an executive one next week, I think, where we have someone coming in from Microsoft to spend an hour with the executive team just talking about the latest trends, because I think it's moving so quickly, right? Yeah. We have it, and we also things like, if I think about dealer call centers, dealers used to call in to ask us questions about what do they need to do in case of this or that, a million different questions. AI does all that for now. We have a system now called BenzBot, and AI does that for now. AI on our website, if you go onto our website, AI will guide you through the website. There's an assistant that will help you build a car, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's pretty. We're not at the cutting edge, but we're by no means covering our eyes and pretending it's not happening. I think the interesting question for me is, given AI and how fast it's accelerating, what is the workforce of the future like? That's a really interesting question. I can't answer that question, by the way, but I think it's a really interesting, because I think about it, we all talk about helping humans be more efficient, be smarter, be quicker. But there's a reality. If you look at some of the legal firms that aren't hiring to any extent the level of interns they used to, because AI can do all that research. But then they didn't hire the interns, what happens to the legal firm in 10 years? Because they haven't got the young interns becoming paralegals, becoming everything else. So I think there's a really interesting workforce question in general. Let's not go there today, but I think we should, at some point, we've got to start thinking about that.
And real quick, one thing my car is going to do when I buy a Mercedes enabled with AI?
It's going to learn which routes you go. If you stop at Starbucks, and it's going to tell you how long it's going to take Starbucks in the morning, then it's going to tell you how long it takes to get to your office, because it'll learn where you go, what you do, and how you use the car. And it'll do that today.
Amazing. Very exciting. Adam, Lars, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate the conversation.
And that's where we'll end it for this episode of People and Strategy. To learn more about the Visionaries Conference, visit shrm.org/en events.
SHRM.